Krishna, you're on mute if you're talking to us.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, I think you are on mute, Prabhu.
I'm sorry. I don't know, I hope my recording went. Okay. I was saying yesterday we read the chapter 6, An Unknown Friend, and Prabhupada, Abhay was actually Prabhupada, Abhay Charanarvind was trying to influence the leaders of the society about solutions to the war. He tried to reach Mahendra Pratap Raja, who is the who formed the World Federation, and he had no interest. He did not. Then he met many government officials. They said, "Okay, it's good, but we cannot join you." But only one High Court advocate he showed some interest, and he tried to approach the Gandhi as well. I think this is what we are reading, right? In all likelihood, Abhay's letter would never reach him. Abhay knew it. Sending a letter to Gandhi would be like putting a note in a bottle and sending it to sea. It would arrive in the floods of mail, and Gandhi would be too busy to see it, but Abhay sent it nonetheless. So Gandhi was so busy man, looks like so influential man. Dear friend Mahatma Ji, please accept my respectful namaskar. I'm your unknown friend, but I had to write to you at this time and again, although you never cared to reply them. I sent you my papers back to Godhead, but your secretaries told me that you have very little time to read the letters and much less of reading the magazines. I asked for an interview with you, but your busy secretaries never cared to reply this. Anyway, as I am your very old friend, although unknown to you, I am writing to you in order to bring you to the rightful position deserved by you. Wow, rightful position deserved by you. As a sincere friend, I must not deviate from my duty towards a friend like your good self. I tell you, as a sincere friend, that you must immediately retire from active politics as if you do not desire to die an inglorious death. You have 125 years to live as you have desired to live, but if you die an inglorious death, it is no worth. The honor and prestige that you have obtained during the course of your present lifetime were not possible to be obtained by anyone else within the living memory. Wow, was that famous? Huh? Yeah, till now he's being worshipped in one way by the world. So, but you must know that all these honors and prestige were false in as much as they were created by the illusory energy of Godhead called the Maya. But this falsity, I do not mean to say that your so many friends were false to you, nor you are false to them. By this falsity, I mean illusion, or in other words, the false friendship and honors obtained thereby were but creation of Maya, and therefore they're always temporary or false, as you may call it. But none of you, neither your friends nor yourself, know this truth. A sadhu is not supposed to flatter but to cut. This is the basis of his friendship, that he cuts away the illusion of the materialistic person. Mahatma Gandhi, forsaken by his friends, bitterly disappointed at the outcome of the long, hard struggle for Indian independence and apprehensive about the future, had been reduced to a position in which he might be able to realize that his friends and work were ultimately illusory. Thus, it was the perfect time for him to comprehend Abhay's message. So, yesterday we read Mahatma Gandhi was in 1947. He was at Kanpur, and he was Prabhupada was reflecting that he tried so much of efforts to keep things together. Didn't work. He tries to keep separate, also didn't work. Everybody, no one, literally everybody's, external they are friends, but no one wants to listen to him in any way. Everybody's fighting for power now. So he dared to write, even though knowing well that he will not be received well, his letter will not may not reach to him, or he may not get response, or he may not, or he even if he reaches, he may not read it also. So here he wanted to be a little straightforward. In once a very humble way, he says, "I'm your unknown friend." It's kind of a if you put right like this, somebody will be much little more inquisitive. So he said that you do not know me, you don't, but I'm your old friend, and I suggest that you immediately retire from your desire to live long, but let's live the life of a glorious. What is the use of living long? And the honor and prestige that you have obtained during the course of present time were not possible. You have so much of honor and respect, but everything is temporary. And because everything is created by the illusory energy of Maya. So, but you do not know this. Neither you, none of your friends know this. But as a sadhu, as a saintly person, my job is not to flatter you. Oh, long live, may your glories, you have a lot of progress. That's the false benedictions people give, material benedictions. He says, as a sadhu, I'm not supposed to flatter you, rather tell the truth as a friend. That I've desired to cut your illusion, cut your illusion of the materialistic person. So this is because he knows that this is the perfect time to write like this way, because he's bitterly disappointed with the outcome. We can preach these times. That way people can listen a little more during difficult times. Got it?
Now, by the grace of God, that illusion is going to be cleared, and thus your faithful friends like Acharya Kripalani and others are choosing you for your inability at the present moment to give them any practical program of work, as you happen to give them during your glorious days of non-cooperation movement. So you are also plight to find out a proper solution for the present political tangle created by opponents. You should therefore take a note of warning from your insignificant friend like me, that unless you retire timely from politics, engage yourselves 7% in the preaching work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas, you shall have to meet with such inglorious deaths as Mussolini, Hitler, or Lloyd George met with. For years, Abhay had wanted to approach Mahatma Gandhi with this message. In fact, he had written before, although it had been of no avail. But he was convinced that unless Gandhi got out of politics, he would soon die an inglorious death. That Gandhi was remaining active in politics rather than preaching devotional service put him in need of a warning. Abhay was writing to save a friend. Summarize. So in summary, Abhay is trying to, in the letter he's writing to Gandhi, he's trying to tell him to leave politics, because if he doesn't, he will soon be basically assassinated or will die a glorious death. And
no, it's not as it's the right assassinated.
Well, he's going to die soon.
Die soon because of the old age, not assassinated. Inglorious death means, the one who lives without any devotional service. Okay.
And it's just basically telling him to preach devotional service and preach the message of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas.
Yeah, and that's the real. You shall have to meet with such inglorious deaths, because he's giving example. So many people are leaders who are there, revolutionaries everywhere, but they all died. for years, I wanted to preach Mahatma Gandhi, but he never got this opportunity. So in fact, he had written before also. Okay, so AJ, you can read.
You can easily understand as to how some of your political enemies in the garb of friends, both Indian and English, have deliberately cheated you and have broken your heart by doing the same mischief for which you have struggled so hard for so many years. You wanted chiefly Hindu-Muslim unity in India, and they have tactfully managed to undo your work by creation of the Pakistan and India separately. You wanted freedom for India, but they have given permanent dependence of India. You wanted to do something for the upliftment of the position of the Bangis, but they are still rotting as Bangis, even though you are living in the Bangi colony. They are all therefore illusions, and when these things will be presented to you as they are, you must consider them as God sent. God has favored you by dissipating the illusion you were hovering in, and by the same illusion you were nursing those ideas as truth. Abai dutifully attempted to inform Gandhi that there was nothing absolute within this relative world. Ahimsa, or nonviolence, must always be followed by violence, just as light is always followed by darkness. Nothing is absolute truth in the dual world. You did not know this, wrote Abai. Neither you ever cared to know this from the right sources, and therefore all your attempts to create unity were followed by disunity, and ahimsa was followed by himsa. So essentially, he just talks about how Gandhi failed, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know, it's harsh. It's a harsh thing to say to him, but he's like, look, you wanted this, but the guys that you thought were helping you were actually undoing it. So, you know, you wanted unity between the Hindus and the Muslims. Instead, they've created disunity, and you wanted this, and they did that instead. So, you know, and then towards the end, that's when he goes and says, like, it's not your fault you didn't know. You know, if you had known, you know, if you had known, I guess ultimately about Krishna, right? You would have known that there's a balance and that you couldn't have had these things. I guess that's what he's trying to say, right? Towards the end,
he's trying to say that there's a God sent. You must consider them as God sent. Means it is a purposefully so that to teach you that this, you know, to teach you that you're hovering in and by the illusion. So you're nursing those. Basically, sometimes as Prabhupada also the same thing, right? Prabhupada has his plans, but Krishna has his own plans. Is to teach him the lesson. So that's what he's also trying to say, that all his failures are because of the understanding that God sent.
That's a heavy letter to write somebody, especially a figure so large.
Yeah, you can see this letter seems to be very heavy letter now. It's like a challenging. Sometimes unknown person might take it like a as a threat or something.
I mean, the first paragraph of the letter is like, look, you're gonna
unknown
die.
friend. Yeah.
Like an unknown friend is telling you you're gonna die soon. Like,
exactly.
try sending that letter to a politician here and see what happens.
Yeah, you know, but he's a sadhu. Even if he caught, it will be fine because he's a sadhu. Everyone knows eventually. But actually, the way it looks like he was a little frustrated. It was heavy on him. But you can write to this as a friend also, as a well-wisher. That's why he says that. He says that the duty of a sadhu is to come to the reality. I don't want to flatter you. I'm telling to the truth. That's very straightforwardness, actually. Devotional service is also one is to be straightforwardness. We should be straightforwardness at least many times. Should we move next? Yes, you can read.
Abhay pointed out that Gandhi had never undergone the standard practice for spiritual advancement, namely accepting a bona fide spiritual master. Although Bhagavad Gita declares the necessity of accepting a guru in disciplic succession, Gandhi was well known for listening to his inner voice and for extracting ideas from various writers like Ruskin and Thoreau and mixing them with the teachings from the New Testament and the Gita. Had Gandhi approached a guru, said Abhay, he would not have become bewildered within the sphere of relative truth. In the Katha Upanishad, it is ordered that one must approach the bona fide guru who is not only well versed in all the scriptures of the world, but is also the realized soul in Brahman, the absolute, in order to learn the science of absolute truth. So, also it is instructed in the Bhagavad Gita as follows: Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya upadeksyanti te gnanam gnanina tattvadarshina. But I know I'll summarize, Prabhu.
Yeah, go ahead.
So here, basically, Abhay points out in the letter that Gandhi did not follow the spiritual practice because he never had a spiritual master. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it states clearly that in order to advance spiritually, you need to accept a guru in the parampara system. And here it is called out that Gandhi was listening to his inner voice or getting influenced by ideas from various writers like Ruskin and Thoreau, and also mixing from the of Gita and the New Testament.
And he's following that, he's holding the Bhagavad Gita, and still he's working on ahimsa. But ahimsa or non-violence must always be followed by violence. I don't know, you read all. Okay, very nice. Thank you, Mataji.
But I know that you never underwent such transcendental teaching except some severe penances which you invented for your purpose, as you have invented so many things in the course of experimenting with the relative truths. You might have easily avoided them if you had approached the Guru as above mentioned. Recognizing Mahatma Gandhi's godly qualities and austerities, Abhay requested him to employ his moral elevation for surrendering to the absolute truth. Abhay urged him to get out of politics immediately. But your sincere efforts to attain some godly qualities by austerities, etc., surely have raised you to some higher platform which you can better utilize for the purpose of the absolute truth. If you, however, remain satisfied with such temporary position only and do not try to know the absolute truth, then surely you are to fall down from the artificially exalted position under the laws of nature. But if you want really to approach the absolute truth and want to do some real good to the people in general all over the world, which shall include your ideas of unity, peace, and non-violence, then you must give up the rotten politics immediately and rise up for the preaching work of the philosophy and religion of Bhagavad Gita without offering unnecessary and dogmatic interpretation on them. I had occasionally discussed this subject in my paper Back to Godhead, and a leaf from the same is enclosed herewith for your reference. Prabhu, you say.
Okay, thank you. He's a you know, Gandhi is still can be condemned, people condemn, and also because of the false. Krishna says that whoever the leader, he must set a right example. And you all know that till now, so many political leaders, they are taking advantage of the severe penances. You know, have you heard about hunger strike? Right? Hunger strike. They are not agree with something. Till now, is happening in India. Actually, can you believe? So politicians will come and they will not eat. They might eat in the night anyway. They will sit in the road and they'll strike, disagree with their until their wishes are fulfilled. So I think it all began with Gandhi's movement, and he said that you have invented for your purpose. You have invented so many things in the course of experimenting with the relative truths, but it's not a bona fide things. So now he's making that, but your sincere efforts to attain some godly qualities by Australia surely have raised to some, little raised to higher platform, because he got the name and fame, and at least some results he got it. But he said that use now to higher purpose, because his point was, Prabhupada, why he's writing is because Gandhi is such an influential person. If he takes, at least some people will take seriously Krishna consciousness. Remain satisfied. Remain satisfied with such temporary position only and do not try to know the absolute truth, then surely will fall down from the artificial exalted position under the laws of nature. So you say I'm also attaching the copy of the Back to Garden as in the spiritual science I've explained for your reference. Okay, Prasanthi.
I would only request.
Maybe I can read this one, right? I would only request you to retire from politics at least for a month only. Let us have discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. I am sure thereby that you shall get a new light from the result of such discussions, not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of the world at large. As I know that you are sincere, honest, and moralist, awaiting your reply, early reply with interest, yours sincerely. So this way, Prabhupada's letter ends. Now you can do that.
There was no reply. A month later, Gandhi announced that he would fast until death unless India made a payment of 550 million rupees to Pakistan, a previous condition of the partition agreement. At first, Hindu refugees from Pakistan demonstrated outside Gandhi's dark room, chanting, "Let Gandhi die." But as he fasted each day closer to death, he aroused the heartfelt concern of the nation, and the government leaders repaid the money to Pakistan. Then great crowds approached him chanting, let Gandhi live." Meanwhile, Hindu-Muslim violence continued. On January 30, the day after he had drafted a new constitution for the Congress party, Gandhi took his evening meal, worked at his spinning wheel, then walked towards his evening prayer meeting and was shot 3 times in the chest. He died crying out the name of the God, Hey Ram. Abhay's letter of the previous month suddenly read like a prophecy, but it had not been read by the person for whom it had been intended. Gandhi, because the Pakistan was not given the money that it was promised, Gandhi fasted. He said he will die till the money was given to Pakistan because he was concerned for Pakistan. But people are not interested. Some people were chanting, "Let Gandhi die." And then because he was reaching closer to death day by day, the government leaders repaid the money because they don't want Gandhi to die. And
Yeah,
later,
basically.
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And later, on January 30, Gandhi was attending his evening prayers, and he died because of the shooting. And before dying, he uttered "Hey Ram," so he was able to chant the name of the God before dying.
Yeah, and basically what happened is in partition, I just recently came to know that India promised to give this money, but what happened is Pakistan was using for army. So Pakistan is fighting in war with India actually. So they realized that if you give this money, then they will use it for the war. It's like feeding the milk to the poisonous snake. So the government was holding not to give, but Gandhi said that how can you stop it? Without giving you must keep your promise. That's why he was having again an hunger strike like that. Anyway, so Prabhupada says that here that he did not read it. It was meant for him, but he didn't read it. Srikar.
When the directors of Mahatma Gandhi Memorial National Fund invited suggestions on how to commemorate Gandhi's life and work, Abhay wrote to them and simultaneously to Vallabhbhai Patel, India's Deputy Prime Minister, proposing Gandhian way to use the funds. Gandhi's whole life was dedicated to the service of humanity at large, with special interest for raising the moral standard. His later activities showed that he was equal to everyone, and all the people of the world knew him more as a spiritual leader than a mere politician. Devotion to God was his ultimate aim, and when I say that his sacred memory should be perpetrated not in the ordinary way but in the Gandhian way, I mean that fitting respects to his memory will be done in the following manner. Abhay wrote of Mahatma Gandhi, rarely described Gandhi as a Vaishnava. Despite his pressing political activities, Gandhi had never missed his daily prayer meetings in the evening. Even at the time of his assassination, he had been on his way to attend his daily kirtana. Abhay stressed that it was because of Gandhi's regular participation in congregational prayers that he had been strong in his work to raise the moral standards of humanity. Gandhiji, minus his spiritual activities, Abhay wrote, is an ordinary politician. But actually, he was a saint among the statesmen. Abhay wrote that it had been Lord Chaitanya who had originated the congregational chanting of the names of Krishna and Rama, and his followers, the six Goswamis, had left a wealth of literature for discussion and understanding. The Memorial Fund Board should take these lessons from Mahatma Ji's practical life and develop it on a large scale. Therefore, one fitting memorial to Mahatma Gandhi would be to institute daily congregational reading from the Bhagavad Gita. When people's spiritual instincts were kindled by daily prayer meetings, then they would develop the higher qualities in their character.
Mm.
So, in summary, so after the death of Mahatma Gandhi, the directors of Mahatma Gandhi Memorial National Fund invited suggestions on how to commemorate his life and work. Then, then Prabhupada wrote it to Vallabhbhai Patel, India's Deputy Prime Minister, and to the fund directors of the fund. So here Prabhupada mentions that Gandhi in his whole life was dedicated to the service of humanity. And then his main interest was in raising the moral standard of the humanity at large. And then Gandhi, unlike other politicians, was like a very pious person. Like he was like had devotion to God. And then we also read that even every day, in spite of his busy political activities, he would never miss his evening prayers. And then even on the day of his death, even on the day when he was assassinated, he was on his way to attend the daily kirtan. So here Prabhupada writes that Gandhiji's life without spiritual activities, it's an ordinary politician. But Gandhi is a saint among all politicians. Like he was because of his devotional aspect also. So then he writes a letter to the fund board asking them to take these lessons from Gandhi's practical life and develop it into a large scale. And then he said he felt that one of the fitting memorial to Mahatma Gandhi would be to institute daily congregational reading from the Bhagavad Gita. So that way, and even that would develop the higher qualities and in their characters, the peoples and everyone. That's what Prabhupada felt.
Nice. Prabhupada wanted to, now he's glorifying here, at least let people take the good things out of it. This way, somehow the Bhagavad Gita can be introduced, by the name of Gandhi. So, yeah. Sridhari?
Abhay had a second suggestion. Gandhi was known for his attempts to enable the lower classes to enter the temples, and in Noakhali, he had installed the deity of Radha and Krishna for the ordinary man to worship. Although this was generally taken as a side issue of Gandhi's work, Abhay took it as the essence that Gandhi's was a theistic movement. Abhay explained that although there were hundreds and thousands of temples in India, they were not being properly managed and therefore educated citizens were neglecting them. In the original Vedic culture, the purpose of the temples had been to nurture spiritual culture. If the temples of India could be reorganized as vital spiritual centers, then the disturbed minds of the day could be trained for higher duties. Such education and practice, Abhay wrote, can help man in realizing the existence of God without whose sanction, according to Mahatma Gandhi, not a blade of grass moves. He also referred to Gandhi's Harijan movement, which most people saw as Gandhi's humanitarian effort to grant equal rights to untouchables, whom Gandhi had recognized as Harijan, people of God. Abhay stressed that this was also an essentially spiritual aspect of Gandhi's life. But rather than simply rubber stamping an untouchable as Harijan, Abhay argued that there must be a systematic program for elevating people of the lower classes. This program was taught in the Bhagavad Gita and could be best applied under the guidance of a bona fide devotee of the Lord. Abhay volunteered to take up the work on behalf of the memorial board. If the board, in attempting to commemorate Gandhi's efforts and accomplishments, neglected the essential spiritual aspects of Gandhi's life, Abhay warned, his memory will soon be dead, as has been the lot of other politicians. Um, so, in Gandhi's work, Gandhi would he used to encourage that temples um, uh, even the ordinary individuals can also go to the temple, but this was considered as a side issue in Gandhi's work. So Prabhupada thought that instead of being it as a side issue, he thought it would he would take it as a main thing and work on it. So even he installed a deity of Radha and Krishna and Noakali for the ordinary men to worship. And he thought in India there were, though there were hundreds and thousands of temples, but they are not properly managed. So the basic purpose of the temple is to nurture the spiritual culture in the individuals. But as they are not properly being managed, um,
Yeah, basically what he's trying to say is
yeah.
that he's trying to take the situation because people don't have a vision. He wanted to connect the spiritual aspect of the Gandhi, even though Prabhupada knows that he is not perfect. But still, he now after he dies, he wants to highlight it and encourage the followers or the leaders. Don't neglect his spiritual aspects because ultimately that is what it is, his glories. But if you neglect, if you just show, what do you call this? You make this thread. Uh, no, what do you call this? Sewing machine? No, not sewing. Weaving. Now Gandhi means everybody sees as a weaving machine only. That's hand rolled machine. So that's what, and all other teachings or proposals of Gandhi is gone. Example, Harijan, the people of God, and all this thing has to be understood in proper spiritual perspective. And using those things, he wanted to, spiritualize and let the human civilization recognize that, so he can set an example for the world to come. But we don't. I think not. Looks like it didn't happen. That's you see, the board is in attempting to commemorate Gandhi's efforts and accomplishments, neglected the essential spiritual aspects of Gandhi's life. However, his memory will soon be dead. He has been the lot of, as there has been a lot of other politicians. What is the difference between him and others? But his glory is he, bringing people spiritual upliftment. So he was just trying to see I can contribute towards these things. That's what I understand. Okay, right? Yeah, Pranath, you can read.
Hare Krishna. Perhaps they saw Abhay as another opportunist seeking money or as a sectarian religionist, but Abhay saw himself as a lowly servant of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, seeing certain Vaishnava qualities in the character of Mahatma Gandhi. Abhay took the opportunity to introduce his spiritual master's message to the world, and by so doing, he paid tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, praising him as a great devotee interested in kirtan, temple worship, and elevating unfortunates to become people of God. While on business in Madurai, in South India, Abhay showed some of his writings to Muthuswami Chetty, another medical salesman. Mr. Chetty was impressed and felt he could persuade his wealthy friend Dr. Alagappa, the famous Birla of the South, to finance the printing. In April of 1948, the Mr. Chetty wrote to Abai saying that he had been prompted to help Abai for something God has meant. He asked Abhay Charan to send him in the complete Gita Upanishad manuscript so that he could present it to Dr. Alagappa in Madras. Mr. Chetty had already written Dr. Alagappa about the first class work Gita Upanishad to cover 1200 pages of royal size and had urged him to publish it for the benefit of religious minded people. He had also mentioned that Abhay had been trying to publish the book since 1946. So, this is about Abhay taking a very humble position and trying to give, introduce his Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's message, and he offered his respects to Mahatma Gandhi and glorified him as a great devotee interested in kirtan, and as also a person who can elevate unfortunates to become God conscious. And down south in Madurai, Abhay showed his writings to Muthu Shetty, who is a medical salesman, and who was going to impress, or he could persuade his friend, Dr. Alagappa, to support or finance the printing part of the book, and he was very favorable, and uh, felt something from within that was his instructions by the Lord himself, and asked Abhay to send the entire manuscript, and to publish it for the benefit of all the people. Also says here that Abhay had been trying to publish the book since 1946. So it's already been a couple of years since he put the manuscript together.
Okay, Mata is there to read.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Dr. Alagappa soon replied to Mr. Chetty that he was interested, and Mr. Chetty wrote to Abhay, "So I am on my way to help you, and only God must help me. As for talking business with Mr. Alagappa, there would be no need, since once he does it, it is for the sake of benevolence." Anticipating success, Mr. Chetty invited Abhay to come to Madras to meet Dr. Alagappa. There, he will arrange for what God has meant for you to do in your religious duty. In Madras, Abhay would be able to check and correct the proofs of the manuscript and see the book through the various stages of printing. It was a big opportunity, and Abhay was not one to miss an opportunity. If the book could be published, it would be a great victory in his mission to fulfill the request of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But then the worst thing happened. The manuscript was stolen. It was the only copy, the one Abhay was keeping safely at home. He questioned his family and servants. No one knew what had happened. Abhay was baffled. So much work had been undone. He felt he had worked so many months for nothing. Although he couldn't prove anything, he suspected that his servant or even his son might have done it with a motive for raising money. But it remained a mystery. So these are the efforts that Prabhupada put to publish the book and fulfill the request of his spiritual master. In the first paragraph that I read, it explains about how Mr. Chetty and Dr. Alagappa were both interested in helping Prabhupada, and how he was planning to go to Madras because Madras was a business capital then.
there were more opportunities in Madras for him to pursue and get his manuscript proved and get his book done and printed. So he really wanted to grab that opportunity. But unfortunately, his manuscript was stolen and he couldn't find where it was. It was almost like undoing everything that he was doing for so long.
Yeah, as soon as I heard that they're asking to send, I said, oh my God, it will be not lost. So it looks like it's already stolen. Such a pain. I think that's what his wife will come into picture probably now. Okay, so Swati Mataji, please read.
During 1949, Abhay wrote articles in Bengali and submitted them to his godbrothers B.P. Keshava Maharaj, who published them in his Gaudiya
Patrika.
Gaudiya Patrika. Abhay's format for addressing world problems was same as his spiritual master. Even at their first meeting in 1922, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had countered Abhay's nationalistic arguments by stressing that real crisis in the world was neither social nor political nor anything material, but was simply the breadth of transcendental knowledge. Abhay simply elaborated on his theme. He never advocated the ordinary concerns of the world be disintegrated, but he stressed that crisis can be solved only when the leadership is God conscious. If Krishna consciousness were put first, other concerns would be brought into the line. But without Krishna consciousness, so called solutions were only follow. Abhay began his first Bengali article by quoting an erotic editorial for the Allahabad edition of Calcutta's newspaper, Amrit Bazar. The editor has sorely lamented the Indians' worst trouble had not yet ended, despite national independence. And Prabhuji, maybe you can summarize.
Right, okay. Prabhupada wrote an article in Bengali in 1949 and to be published in Gaudiya Patrika. And that time already, maybe it's separate for Keshav Maharaj, this because all other mutts has stopped printing already, right? Because they sold the printing press. Our format for address, we already discussed all this thing. See, it's similar way he learned from his spiritual master many things the way he did. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also had told whatever he kind of countered Abhay's in convincing him about nationalistic arguments. In the same way, he also started writing actually. So he writes, if Krishna consciousness were put to first, other concerns will be brought into line. But without Krishna consciousness, the so-called solutions were only folly. So that's the thing, that what devotee sees, what the other sees, different, very different, very, very hard. Abhay began his first Bengali article by quoting an editorial from the Allahabad edition of the Calcutta newspaper, Amrit Bazar. So the editor had sorely lamented that India's worst troubles had not yet ended, despite national independence. I think this is what Prabhupada is writing. Our problems are not ending, and we all are witnessing now also, right? Very good. Who else is Vijayanand Prabhu?
The National Week has begun. The memories of Jallianwala Bagh and political serfdom no longer trouble us, but our trouble is far from being at an end. In the dispensation of providence, mankind cannot have any rest. If one kind of trouble goes, another quickly follows. India, politically free, is faced with difficulties no less serious than those that troubled us under a foreign rule. Abhay seized on this editorial reflection as proof of the basic defect of all worldly plans of amelioration. He pointed out that although India had been subjugated by foreign rulers since the time of Muhammad Ghori, AD 1050, India prior to India prior to that had never been subjugated. In those days, India had been a God-conscious nation. It was when India's leaders had abandoned their spiritual heritage that India had fallen. Thus, Indians should see that they were now being punished by the stringent laws of material nature. The honorable editor of Amrita Bazar Patrika, Abe noted, has written so sadly. If one trouble goes, another quickly follows. But that was stated in the Bhagavad Gita a long time previously. It was the same theme he had started in his 1944 back to harder articles and the theme of so many of his letters also. Man, due to his neglect of the Supreme Lord, is being punished by material nature, which is directly controlled by the Supreme Lord. Men may write newspaper articles, pass measures at meetings and conferences, and attempt to overcome nature by scientific research. Yet they will remain unable to surmount nature's law. As they try to escape their punishments, the Supreme Lord will cast them deeper into illusion and they will fail miserably. Abe quoted an appropriate Bengali saying, I was trying to make a statue of Shiva, but I ended up making a monkey. Okay, so these paragraphs it describes how the situation of the country it was at those times. Earlier, the country had the problem of invading by the foreigners, and that time the problem was different. And after they left the country and they gave the independence, then the problems become different actually. If one problem goes and a totally different problem comes, and it was keep on continuing. And also we saw Abe got an opportunity to share his thoughts in some of the magazines actually. And he also where he had pointed out that from the time of Muhammad Ghori till the time after independence, the situation seems to be the same. And India earlier was a God-conscious nation, but that spirituality has been abandoned by the spiritual heritage has been abandoned by the different leaders as the time goes. And also it was mentioned this scenario, if one problem goes and another problem comes, has been already described in Bhagavad Gita a long back. And it also describes how people do not take the Supreme Lord, do not take they do not understand the importance of the Supreme Lord, and they focus on the material things. So as a result of that, more and more problems happen. And it is it is also ending with Bengali saying that they're trying to I'm trying to make a statue of Shiva, but I ended up making a monkey.
Yeah, it's interesting. People are looking for it, but ultimately they are not seeking the spiritual solution. That's the whole point of is trying to convince the message. It's, you all are suffering because you're not taking the spiritual solution, you're neglecting the spiritual solutions. There's no end. Example, okay, now one government is trying to fix it, but unless people's heart is not transformed by the proper cultivation of Bhagavad Gita, teachings of Bhagavad Gita, there's no change. You will just keep on struggling for years, centuries after centuries. There's no solution to it. Varun, you want to read? Yeah.
In order to rid the world of misery and bring about happiness, we have now created the atomic bomb. Seeing the all-pervading destruction which could take place in the near future by atomic reactions, Western thinkers have become greatly disturbed. Some people try to give consolation, saying that we will only use this atomic energy to bring about happiness in the world. This is also another enigma of the illusory potency. The problem, Abhay explained, was that the world was lacking Krishna conscious devotees. Leaders under the influence of material nature could never solve the problems of the world. Materialistic illusion was especially prevalent in the Western countries, which Indians should not try to imitate. Abhay prophesies, however, that Krishna consciousness would one day reach the West. In the Western countries, there has never been any discussion of the relation between the atomic individual soul and the supreme complete consciousness, personality of Godhead. Neither their activities nor their state in ultimate perfection has been investigated. That is why, even though they have made so much material advancement, they're squirming in the burning poison of sensualism. We can be absolutely certain that India's real peace formula will one day reach their ears. So, in summary, Abhay is saying that now the Westerners think that using destructive weapons will bring happiness, but that's actually just another enigma of illusory potency. And the real problem was that the whole world was lacking Krishna conscious devotees and the preaching of Krishna consciousness, because everyone is covered by the materialistic illusion. But he still prophesies that one day Krishna consciousness will reach the West. You can explain the last one.
Yeah, and also they're trying Western culture, Western way of dealing things. So in the Western country, there has never been any discussion of the relation between atomic individual, soul and super soul. Neither the activities nor the state in ultimate perfection has been investigated. That's why even though they have made so much material advancement, they are swimming in the burning poison of sensualism. We can be absolutely certain that India's real peace plan will one day reach their ears. Interesting, now the government is really trying to give the taste of India's, I'm hearing that his desire that let world learn what India can provide. Hope, but we don't know what they're trying to provide anyway. There's so much of struggle now also. If you see, different parties are trying to introduce Bhagavad Gita, and but till now they've been not successful in teachings of Indian education system. But slowly, at least the fight is going on. So this fight, if you see, has started from Prabhupada that time. Okay, AJ, you can read this.
Abhai's articles began appearing regularly in the Gaudiya. Is that Patrika or
Patrika?
Okay. Abhai's articles began appearing regularly in the Gaudiya Patrika. His godbrothers appreciated his writings. His denunciation of the materialistic mentality was reminiscent of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. In Abhai's hands, the Bhagavad Gita's concepts of Asura, demon, was no longer merely a depiction of a mythological or legendary enemy. The Asuras had come to life in the modern day Hitler, Churchill, and even in Indian Prime Minister, But as Abhai pointed out, his denunciation of the misleaders was not his own. He was only repeating the words of Krishna. During 1950 and 1951, he continued his letter writing, attempting to gain a hearing with various organizations and leaders. He wrote to the World Pacifist Committee, the President of India, and the Minister of Education. He wrote to the Indian Congress for Cultural Freedom, which wrote back suggesting that Abhai had written them by mistake. He wrote to an official of the All Religions Conference in Bombay, advising that because of their approach, nothing practical would come out of their conference. The practical solution is lying in the transcendental message of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, as given by him in the Bhagavad Gita. So yeah, the first paragraph is just, it's funny. He's saying, it sounds like he was able to connect kind of a somewhat abstract idea of demons, right? And personify them through, Hitler, Churchill, and the Prime Minister of India at the time, and help people kind of connect the concept to real life. But again, saying, hey, this wasn't my idea, right? I'm just telling you what Krishna said, which is, I forget the word there. Was it, Tapa?
Asura?
Oh, no, sorry. I was saying just that, the importance that, the guru shouldn't be making things up. He should just be repeating what his guru taught him.
Yeah.
And he's following that line all the way back to Krishna. And then it goes, the second paragraph talks about how he was just still writing letters and how sometimes his letters weren't well met, including one that that he sent that they were like, I don't think you meant to send this to us. This is not for us. This is for somebody else. But it just talks about how he was just consistently trying to spread the message. So.
Yeah, now also we have in Delaware, the peace organization that try to have the peace in the Delaware, but they say, okay, you do whatever you want to do for peace. There's no concept of how to bring peace.
Yeah.
Krishna teaches in the 6th chapter. it's like, eradicating hunger without supplying food. So without focusing peace is associated with mind, people are coming with so much of proposal. Gaurang, I'm hearing. Okay, so Cyclone Prabhu, you can do, please.
On September 14, 1951, he corresponded with Daniel Bailey of the American Reporter, a magazine published by the American Embassy in New Delhi. Abe pointed out that the philosophy of understanding the absolute truth, as realized by the sages of India, was higher than attempts to combine East and West. Mr. Bailey replied that he was aware of Eastern philosophical and religious influence in the West and cited the progress of a yoga mission in New York City, which he said had some influence on the Protestants in America. But when Abe asked if one of his articles could appear in the American Reporter, Mr. Bailey replied, if we were to give considerable space in the American Reporter to say the Gita, we, in all fairness, would have to give equal space to the other philosophies, and our desire is not to endorse or condemn any of them, but simply to assist in a better understanding. In a further reply, Abe differed with Mr. Bailey's contention that people should be encouraged to make their own interpretation of religion. Less intelligent men are always guided by those who are superior in knowledge in all spheres of life. Abe even wrote to the Ford Foundation in Detroit, and the staff assistant wrote back, regret to advise you that we are unable to pursue your suggestions concerning the establishment of an association of the intelligent class of people. The Ford Foundation has no program in which specific ideas such as you described might be included.
That is funny. Ford Foundation is building now Mayapur Temple. Yeah, go ahead.
So here, Abe, he communicated with Daniel Bailey, who is the reporter for the American Reporter magazine, published by the American Embassy in New Delhi. So Abe wanted to publish the philosophy of the absolute truth in the magazine, and he asked him if they would publish it. And Mr. Bailey responded that if they give space to the Gita in their magazine, they would have to give a similar space to the other philosophies. So Abe did not agree with that, and he said that less intelligent men should be guided by people who have the superior knowledge. And when he reached out to the Ford Foundation to establish an association of the intelligent class of people, he was rejected by them that they had no interest.
Although most of his suggestions were rejected, occasionally he received words of appreciation. A certain Dr. Muhammad Syed, PhD, a professor at the University of Allahabad, wrote, "You seem to have assimilated the universal teaching of ancient India, which is really laudable." And the governor of Uttar Pradesh replied, "You are doing noble work, for nothing is nobler than to be God-minded." Not only was Abhay giving advice in his letters, but he was hinting that he could also give practical help. If he could obtain institutional backing, he was prepared to do many things: teach classes, manage temples, teach temple worship, and initiate devotees, as well as organize various kinds of field work to propagate the principles of Bhagavad Gita. Usually, he did not spell out exactly how things should be done, but he pointed to the philosophical defects in the present methods and the superiority of working in accord with the Vedic literature. By the grace of his spiritual master, he knew the science of applying Bhagavad Gita to almost any situation. If someone would only show interest, he could teach that person the superiority of working according to Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, you want me to say that? Okay. So you have seen so many rejections, but occasionally you would get some appreciations also. Example, Muhammad Said and Uttar Pradesh government also replied on the good work. But he was, the only thing is, not only Abe was giving advice, but he was hinting that he could do some practical help. You know, sometimes you get people appreciate, but okay, I'm happy that you're doing this, but you know, I cannot do. So he is not clear, but he in his mind he could, I can teach in class, manage temple, so many things, organize various kind of field work, but he was not getting those things. So he usually did not spell out exactly how things should be done, but he pointed philosophical it's kind of a awakening, you know, finding corrections, defects, philosophical defects present. So he was giving, but his desire was to do more. By the grace of spiritual master, he knew the science of applying Bhagavad, the practical applications. I think Krishna had his own plans, so much of struggle. Wow, it's not an easy journey. For years, one man was working so much like this. Prasanthi, please read.
After attending a meeting in which a prominent industrialist had stressed harmonious relationships between labor and management in his factory, Abhay wrote a long letter suggesting the man consider the good effects the congregational chanting of Hare Krishna could produce. Since the factory had a special employees club and lounge, Abhay suggested that the workers assemble there and chant Hare Krishna. Abhay urged everyone to surrender to Krishna, but most people had their own philosophies and took his spirit to be sectarian or proselytizing. But Bhagavad Gita was universal, Abhay wrote, and God could not be omitted from any program, even in the name of a secular state. Krishna, as the father of all living beings, had jurisdiction over all programs, organizations, and governments. Indians especially should appreciate the universal scope of Bhagavad Gita. Although Abhay always had a plan of action behind his suggestions, he first sought the interest of his correspondent. There wasn't much interest, and he was repeatedly turned down, but he never felt discouraged. He always anticipated finding a sympathizer. He kept copies of all his letters and their replies, a word of appreciation or a slight show of interest from a correspondent being sufficient to elicit from Abhay another thoughtful reply. He met a prominent industrialist who stressed on the good relationship between workers and the management. He thought that he can persuade him for congregational chanting of Hare Krishna, and he suggested that, but he was turned down, and most of the people thought that he was sectarian. They have their own philosophies, and they didn't want to listen to him. But he explains that God is universal. Krishna is the father of all living beings. So no matter what philosophy they are following, as the father of all living beings, and as he has the jurisdiction of all the programs, everybody come under him, and we can directly approach him itself. And he was never disappointed in spite of being turned down many times. And he saved copies of all the letters, replies, and a word of appreciation. And he never stopped his struggle. He always tried to find people whom he can reach and help.
Yeah, just like people have no time for Krishna consciousness, they're busy now. Seems like that simple life in those times. Also, people are so busy, they didn't have no priority to take Krishna consciousness, no desire. Yes. Oh, one more person can read. Srikar, you can read.
He had developed a keen sense of dedication to Lord Chaitanya's mission without expecting leadership from the Gaudiya Math. He still cherished the idea that his godbrothers would soon come together and preach. But he didn't put any energy in the mathas, since to do so would mean to become involved in one of the factions. Staying clear of the Gaudiya Mutt's internal fray, Abhay continued his letter writing campaign alone, introducing himself as a preacher of Bhagavad Gita and editor of Back to Godhead magazine. In 1948, Abhay closed his Lucknow factory. He had fallen behind in employee's salary, and since 1946, he had been paying past rent in installments. But when sales dropped, continuing the factory became impossible. He lost everything. Srila Prabhupada, I started a big laboratory in Lucknow. Those were golden days. My business flourished like anything. Everyone in the chemical business knew, but then gradually everything dwindled. With the help of some acquaintance in Allahabad, he opened a small factory there, in the same city where his Prayag pharmacy had failed 15 years before. He moved to Allahabad with his son Brindavan and continued manufacturing medicines. While the rest of the family remained in Banerjee Lane in Calcutta, Abhay continued his traveling, but now he was often away for months at a time. So, in summary, Srila Prabhupada had developed keen dedication to Lord Chaitanya's mission, but he did not expect any leadership from the Gaudiya Mutt. He still cherished that the idea that all the God brothers would come together and preach, but again, he did not put and show any big interest in the details of all the mathas. Because if he wanted to show interest, then he had to involve in all the factions, which he didn't want to. So he understood the purpose of Gaudiya Mutt, and then he started continuing his own letter writing campaign alone. And then he introduced himself as Bhagavad Gita preacher, and then editor of the Back to Godhead magazine. And then we see how the Lucknow factory, which Prabhupada had opened, it was dwindling, and then finally he had to close it down. And then Srila Prabhupada here writes that he started a big Lucknow factory. I mean, those were the golden days. And then everybody knew that how famous it was. But again, gradually everything was gone. And then with the help of some acquaintance, he opened a small factory again in Allahabad. And then he and his son, he moved there. And then his son would help him manufacturing some of the medicines. And then, but the rest of his family still stayed in Calcutta. And then he would stay, away from his family for months now.
You all remember where he opened the last factory with 50,000 rupees? Was it Kanpur? I forgot which place he opened, and then he needed help from Gauranga. He wrote the letter to Gauranga, and everything fell apart.
That was Lucknow.
That was Lucknow only?
Yeah.
Okay. So then again, the Lucknow same thing is still, looks like business is still existing. Huh? During that time, I think that is closed because of the losses. Okay. Very nice. It's 8:41. Anyone has a quick comments before we wind up? Hope everyone is following, seeing Prabhupada's sincere determination. I want to say that, the Vaishnava is a compassionate always. Being a Vaishnava is always compassionate, always well-wisher. The world will not understand. Advaita Acharya, while reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, all of you know that Advaita Acharya desperately prayed for the Lord to descend. And Lord descended, propagated. Now, Prabhupada comes, is so desperate to give to Krishna consciousness to, people of this world, stop this war and fight. But unfortunately, they don't, we are fortunate, we got it. We received it somehow or other, cherish this treasure of Krishna consciousness. Idea is, for us to develop a deep appreciation in our heart, so we don't take things as granted. This life and this moment, how it has come to us, we know many people do not appreciate. Appreciation is don't, because they don't know how difficulty, how much labor, how much hard work, how much lives has been sacrificed to bring it up to us, to our hand, this Krishna conscious moment. Anyway, this is not ending, it's long to go. Now the glories of Krishna consciousness will come more and more as he comes to America. Any comments, quick comments? Everyone doing well? Hope writing some notes a little bit. So this can help. If no one has, then we can end. Is that okay? We'll continue from here tomorrow. I was thinking we'll finish today, but looks like didn't work. We'll finish tomorrow and we'll start the chapter 7 also. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lilamrita ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Have a good night.
Krishna.